In my last video, I mentioned that fiber is an important nutrient of the human diet, and the amount of fiber that one consumes is an indication of the quality of an individual's diet. In the US, the average individual consumes around 10 to 12 grams of fiber per day. What is the average fiber consumption of a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago? We will find that out after this. Hi, I'm Howard of Trinigirevik, where it is believed that health and strength is a choice and not up to chance. Therefore, this channel addresses health and fitness topics and gives tips and strategies so that you can make the right choice. At the end of my last video, I promised that I would look at the nutrition facts of commonly consumed foods in Trinidad and Tobago to determine if they contribute to good health or poor health. Before I get into that, let me give a quick review so that one can see the reason why I'm doing this. I relayed the importance of fiber in the human diet in my last video. Link will be in the description below. In that video, I refer to the work of two doctors with different dietary ideologies, Dr. Robert Lustig and Dr. Michael Greger. Ironically, they both agree on the importance of fiber in the mitigation of obesity and chronic diseases. Both of these doctors say in their literary works that our ancestors ate about 100 grams of fiber or more a day. Compare that to modern times, especially in the US, where the average daily consumption of fiber is as low as 10 grams a day. Coinciding with that marked decrease in US fiber consumption is the healthcare crisis in the US. The US health expenditure in 2018 was $3.65 trillion US dollars, compared to the year 2000, which was $1.37 trillion US dollars. A 266% increase in health expenditure over a 20-year period. This is mainly due to the marked increase in chronic diseases in the US. In Trinidad and Tobago, the trend is similar, as was noted by the Minister of Health, Mr. Terence Yalsing, in the 2019 to 2020 budget debate.
Madam Speaker, NCDs is one of the most critical elements facing this country. And our health budget went up from $3.08 billion in 2008 to $6.0 billion in 2019. That is unsustainable. We have to tackle NCDs.
This represents an almost 100% increase over an 11-year period. As alluded to by the Health Minister, this is due to the increasing NCD burden in the population. Speaking of budget, there was a recent conference titled Spotlight on the Budget 2021. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, mentioned certain priorities in the budget.
And that is why at the Recovery Committee meetings, one of the agreements was that for the next budget, the Minister of Finance will have to tell the country in straight, unvarnished terms just how much money is available to be appropriated in the national budget. In other words, let's face reality. How much do we have to allocate on the revenue side, whether it is from tax take or from borrowings, what is the inflow that is available for the next 12 months. And when that is made known, then how do we apportion it to the things that we have been doing or that we want to do, but most importantly, what are the priorities? The government is in the center of the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and the priorities that we will choose as government is against the background that we do not want to unduly affect any individual or sector, leave no one behind, but the decisions and the priorities are to give all of us a chance to survive and to prosper. So the priorities will include ensuring that we service our national debt, because to not do that is to create a new calamity to add to whatever we have facing us now. It is paying for money that we borrowed and spent at an earlier time, hopefully spent usefully, but the priority that the national debt places on us allows us to intervene and to participate in the international economy. If we do not service our national debt or put ourselves in a situation where our national debt cannot be serviced by our own actions, there are consequences to that. The most obvious consequence is to ask for help. And you know where that help comes from. It comes from a place which brings with it more pain, more suffering in a shorter space of time than we could ever prescribe for ourselves. So we have to manage that. That's a priority. The other priority is national security. If we are not safe and secure, hale and hearty or sick, then our circumstance would not be enviable. Then we also have to ensure that the next generation have an opportunity to grow and to prosper. So we make sure we look after our children. But in doing all of this, we have to make sure that we stay healthy. So health is also a priority.
Now, given that one of the priorities was health, this is very reassuring to hear. However, I hope that what he was referring to was an emphasis on preventive health and not on health care.
Since assuming the role of minister, I have never, ever been introduced correctly. My name is correct, Terence Dial Singh, the honorable, temporarily I will hold that. I am a minister, I am from Trinidad, but I am not the Minister of Health. Because what I have found is that I am the Minister of Health Care. Trinidad and Tobago has spent $40 billion in health care from 2005 to 2016. But are we healthier? The answer is no, and that's where I put my foot in my mouth. I am the Minister of Health Care. I am the Minister of providing scalpels to amputate legs. I am the Minister of providing anti-diabetic drugs, health care. I am the Minister of providing statins, free health care. I am the Minister of providing methyl dopa, health care. I am the Minister of providing anti-cancer drugs to combat lung cancer due to lifestyle diseases, health care. That is what I am. I am not the Minister of Health.
Might I suggest to the Prime Minister that one of the ways that Trinidad and Tobago can improve our health as a nation is by taking a good hard look at what we eat and our general nutritional habits. As I alluded to in my last video, again, one of the nutrients that is essential to health is a nutrient that isn't absorbed in the human body. What is the fiber consumption in Trinidad and Tobago. This information has been difficult to get in the public domain. In the absence of publicly available data, I hope that this video will help to give a rough average of the fiber consumption of an average Trinidad and Tobago citizen. Now, how will I accomplish this? I would look at the nutrition facts of 3 common foods that an average Trinidad and Tobago citizen may eat at various times in his or her life. Then use the accumulation of the amount of fiber and other nutrients from these 3 foods. The foods which will be looked at are 1. Doubles, 2. Chicken roti, and Pilaf. Now I know that this method isn't a very scientific method, but until a scientific study is done, one can only guesstimate. Using the website myfitnesspal.com, a search for Trinidad doubles yields a variety of entries for doubles. The one which I chose was generic Trinidad doubles, which displayed these nutrition facts. One generic Trinidad doubles has 345 calories, 51 grams of carbs, 11 grams of fat, and 9 grams of protein. Most people don't eat 1 doubles. Usually people tend to eat 2 or more. So 2 doubles will have 690 calories, 102 grams of carbohydrates, 22 grams of fat, and 18 grams of protein. But the amount of fiber in 2 Trinidad doubles is 4 grams, according to myfitnesspal.com. So 102 grams of carbohydrates, 22 grams of fat, 18 grams of protein, and only 4 grams of fiber, which comes mainly from the chana or chickpeas. Is anyone seeing the disparity here? And before I go on, a small question. What are the implications of this disparity? Usually, carbohydrates, fats, and protein are the usual macronutrients that are monitored by most dietitians, nutritionists, bodybuilders, physique athletes, etc. Now, while these macronutrients are important for health and fitness, just looking at these macronutrients in a vacuum just gives a piece of the puzzle and it doesn't tell the entire story. You may see some social media influencers pushing a type of dietary concept called flexible dieting, or if it fits your macros. If it fits your macros, or flexible dieting is basically eating any food, either processed or unprocessed, as long as certain daily numbers of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are achieved. Or as it says on the website iifym.com, no foods are off limits as long as it fits your macro requirements. You can eat whatever you like. This right here is a major pitfall of this approach. As I alluded to in my last video, the source of your food is a significant factor in your health and weight loss or body composition goals.
Ultimately, I can sum up healthy eating in 2 clauses. Protect the liver, feed the gut. Protect the liver, feed the gut. If you protect the liver so that it's not getting the tsunami of monoundisaccharides that come from ultra-processed food digestion and absorption early on in the duodenum, then you protect the liver. If you can move that food through the intestine so that it doesn't get absorbed in the duodenum and gets further down to the jejunum so that the intestinal microbiome can chew it up. That means even though you ate it, you didn't get it. Since this is a macronutrient excess problem, this chronic metabolic disease problem, if you can get your bacteria to chew it up instead of you, then it doesn't really matter what passed here, it matters what passed here. Right? It doesn't matter what you ate, it matters what you absorbed. So if you feed the gut, you solve the problem. Protect the liver, feed the gut. Real food does that. Processed food doesn't.
Let's use doubles as an example. Each half of the double sandwich, also known as bara, is a dough made of refined flour and deep fried in oil. This gives the doubles a soft, chewy texture. Flour, sugar, and oil are processed products that are extracted from their original sources. The extraction process removes the fiber component. Therefore, the glucose from the flour and the fats from the oil are easily absorbed through the intestinal walls. This places a heavier burden on the liver and other endocrine organs, especially the pancreas, due to the higher amount and rate of absorption through the intestines because of the deficiency of fiber. Another pitfall of doubles is this: trans fats. A common source of trans fats is a deep frying of foods in oils. This is what the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine concluded in their 2003 Dietary Reference Intakes Report. In support of this approach, the macronutrient report cites research indicating that saturated fatty acids, trans fatty acids, and cholesterol are not required in the diet. The macronutrient report also presents results of regression analysis of various studies that indicate that any incremental increase in intake of these fats correspondingly increases blood total and low density lipoprotein or LDL, cholesterol, and the risk of coronary heart disease. So, to piggyback on a local saying, what's sweet in the goat mouth can sour in the arteries. So, 4 grams of fiber for breakfast. Let's move on to lunch. Chicken roti. According to myfitnesspal.com, a generic chicken roti has 460 calories, 66 grams of carbs, 10 grams of fat, 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber. Roti, like doubles, is a staple street food in Trinidad and Tobago. It bears some similarities to doubles when referring to the ingredients. Refined flour, refined oils, and margarines or ghee are some of the processed ingredients used in making roti. I already talked about refined flour and oils, but I must mention something about margarine or ghee. Margarine, butter, ghee, or shortening of any kind is a processed fat that is hydrogenated to remain solid at room temperature. However, there is a huge downside to this process. Hydrogenation of fats makes the said fats similar in structure to trans fats, and I already established what are the consequences of trans fat consumption. The chicken also represents a problem. most people will associate chicken as being a healthy source of protein. However, there are numerous studies that conclude that this is a false narrative. While chicken does contain a substantial amount of protein, however, that protein is animal protein. This is the type of protein that is not good for you. Now, why is this, you might ask? Dr. Michael Greger, in his book, How Not to Die, discusses the effect of animal protein on the kidneys. Animal protein increases the acid load on the kidneys, potentially damaging kidney cells due to overproduction of ammonia and free radicals, and reducing kidney function, leading to possible kidney failure. I'll put a link in the description below for more information. Chicken also carries the baggage of saturated fat, trans fat, and cholesterol, all of which, according to the Institute of Medicine, are not required in the diet and increases the risk of coronary heart disease. And I must also note that there is no fiber in the margarine, nor in the ghee, nor in the chicken. So far, after eating breakfast and lunch, we have consumed 1,150 calories, 168 grams of carbohydrates, 32 grams of fat, 43 grams of protein, and 10 grams of fiber. So, let's move on to dinner now. Chicken Pilaf. Pilaf, the ever popular dish for beach limes, river limes, birthdays, and so on. It's essentially rice, pigeon peas, and chicken seasoned with coconut milk and other seasonings, and it gets its distinct brown color due to caramelization of brown sugar. Chicken Pilaf, according to myfitnesspal.com, has this nutritional profile. One serving of chicken has 636 calories, 61 grams of carbohydrates, 23 grams of fat, 44 grams of protein, and 4 grams of fiber. Yes, 4 grams of fiber, mainly coming from the pigeon peas. The rice and the coconut milk is processed, therefore no fiber from those two ingredients. That is, unless you make the coconut milk directly from the coconuts. The same thing applies for the chicken. So this overall sample of food consumption in a day yielded 1,768 calories, 229 grams of carbohydrates, 55 grams of fat, 87 grams of protein, and 14 grams of fiber, which is just above the daily average consumption of a US citizen. Now, this figure is definitely not an exact figure, and it's entirely possible that there may be some people in Trinidad and Tobago who may be eating more than 14 grams. However, the minimum recommended amount of fiber intake by the US Food and Drug Administration is 25 grams of fiber for a 2,000 calorie diet and 30 grams for a 2,500 calorie diet. Given the nation's high NCD burden, along with the STEPS report observation that the local population is consuming fewer fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and whole grain cereals, it is within reason to assume that our dietary intake falls woefully short of the minimum recommended daily intake of 25 grams a day. It is my belief that if as a nation we focus on increasing our fiber intake for starters, this nation will have a lower entity burden, putting less strain on our health care resources. If one's diet is mainly centered around fruits, vegetables, whole grains and whole grain cereals, 25 grams of fiber a day is not hard to achieve. Don't believe me? I will show you how easy it is to achieve the recommended daily amount of fiber in the next video by just focusing on plant foods. So, question of the day. Tell me in the comments below. Question number 1. What foods or dishes do you usually eat in a day? And 2, do you think you are getting the daily minimum recommended amount of fiber? As usual, all links related to the content in this video will be in the description below. What did you think of the information in this video? If you found it useful, show a neighbor, show a friend. Till next time, be safe and be well. And remember, health and strength are more about choices and less about chances.